Keycult had the reputation for being one of the highest, if not highest quality makers in the keyboard space. The 160, 165, number 1 TKL, number 2 TKL all had impeccable quality and showed absolutely no blemishes. The blemishes on the B stocks were so hard to find that you needed a microscope and a few sets of eyeballs to even figure it out. Safe to say, they were and still are a lot of people's endgame. So what in the actual is this? My name is Andy and I've been in the keyboard hobby since 2019, and this is a series of videos where I just examine a few aspects of the keyboard hobby. This video is not sponsored. Well, it is, kind of. It's sponsored by my patrons, YouTube channel members, and Discord channel members. They brought up this idea and I ran with it, and because of their continued support, it allows me to keep making content, even edgy ones like this, because you know this one's gonna get me in trouble. Keycult is currently a made in America maker. They bought their own CNC machine and stopped doing manufacturing in China, which is basically standard practice. You have some people here, they really like keyboards, they figure out a design, they refine that design, they prototype in China. If it comes back great, they sell it over here. That's the most economical way of doing things. So Keycult buying their own CNC machine and bringing all their manufacturing over here was an interesting business move.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
But they were doing well and at the top of their game. We'll get back to this. I personally have owned the Keycult 165, Keycult 160, built a number 1 TKL, and tried a handful of TKLs. I've recently built this, which is the powdered blue unit, which is the main reason why we're making a video today. But back to the ones I've owned. The 165 and 160 had damn near perfect sound to me. Clean aesthetic, felt quality in hand, clean gasket sound, absolutely no hollowness or case ping. It was an overachiever in the world of custom keyboards. The number 1 and number 2 TKL were much larger, and I think the number 1 had better sound and the number 2 looked cooler, or it was the other way around. Either way, with the highest quality keyboards, even if the sound was a little bit subpar, people still loved them. The 265 was a cool aesthetic, but the sound was a little bit harder to deal with. It still had that signature Keycult gasket sound, and it's really hard to compare a Vega to the quality of Keycult. But honestly, when the Vega came to the market, it was very, very close to the sound of the Keycult 165. It's just unfortunate that the 265, few people reported hollow mods unless you built it a specific way. And that's a bit of a shame. Keycult, hollowness, that's when I started to really look at these keyboards with a more critical eye. And about the build process of this 265, which has the full kind of back, no mid piece, or the design on the back, it's a very specific look. The build process was absolutely horrendous. Unless you built it a specific way, it wouldn't even close. And the directions were not correct. I followed them and the back piece didn't end up being flush and I had to rebuild it, and everyone that I've talked to that owns a 265 absolutely hates the build process. Oh my god, they all flipped over. That USB isn't even, it's not even, if you see a lip, it might not be tight enough. Okay, I see a lip, fuck. But normally with the 160 and 165, the gaskets are already installed. It was a little bit hard to build them because the tolerance was so tight because they were so perfect, but at least it was a standard build, whereas the Keycult 265, I probably would never rebuild it if I didn't have to. So how do people get these Keycults? Well, typically they're sold via a raffle system. It's evolved a few times to try to stop resellers and flippers, but honestly, flippers will always find a way. So you enter a raffle with your Discord account, get a chance to buy, and if you win, you can pick up your extras and they ship it in a nice little package. The unboxing experience from Keycult is unmatched, and it definitely feels like a premium product. And as for how I got the 165 and 160, I bought it from a flipper. That's basically it. My local friend actually won one of the Keycults, and I know it was very rare and really hard to get keyboards at the time. I didn't want to just ask to buy it from him for retail because I feel like, okay, if you got lucky enough to actually win a raffle, because it's really hard to win a raffle, you should enjoy some kind of profit. I agreed to throw him some bones and became the new owner of a 165 black teal. That means it didn't have a brass weight, it was just an aluminum back. And I was extremely happy with it. I ended up trading around and getting my hands on a 160 as well. Same thing, great sound, great feel, just different form factors, and I had no qualms about the quality, and it definitely felt and looked premium. But I ended up selling those boards because they didn't feel great that I spent so much money on them. So I didn't have a vested interest in the manufacturing capabilities after that, because this was before they brought their manufacturing to the States. So I reached out to an individual who was in a private buy with them to get some insight on what they've observed as a customer in the current age. This individual had more frequent communication with Keycult, so they were able to explain some issues that the private run was having. From the outside looking in, they had a reasonable system of doing design in the United States and having manufacturing and anodizing done overseas, but they decided to make a change. So we have to understand that there's two parts. CNC is making the physical thing, the aluminum case, the brass weights. Anodizing is the color that you apply to it. So that's the last finish that you see on the keyboard. There are two parts, and Keycult only brought the CNC portion in-house. They still don't have a fully fleshed out process for manufacturing keyboards from beginning to end to getting to the consumer. They still have to rely on outsourcing anodization through American finishers who are unlikely to be able to do at the same volume as China. I'm personally not itching to buy made in America keyboards and accessories. I just want the best price in reasonable time and reasonable quality. For private consumers and enthusiasts like myself, if I wanted a keyboard anodized, I would actually send it overseas. That's the best way to do it. Over here, I can maybe get one keyboard Cerakoted, which is a different process, but it would take like 2 or 3 weeks. For a company like Keycult that's pushing out higher quantity, that's just not going to cut it. For them to scale and grow like they wanted, in these fireside talks that they did on stream, they talked about getting a Keycult in the hand of every person that wants one.
Our goal is to make it possible for anyone who wants to buy a Keycult keyboard to be able to buy a Keycult keyboard.
That's why they brought it in-house. That's just not very feasible domestically. Like, Chinese factories can just do so much volume, just way more volume than any small shop over here. So they were able to CNC the keyboards, which is great. They mentioned recently that their anodizer just screwed them over, and that's why they haven't been able to finish certain projects. But they've been consistently dropping seemingly random products like trays or other units, while some other customers that have prepaid are left in the dark. What I'm referring to is the latest private commission issues, and that was one of the first times the crack in the armor showed up for Keycult. People honestly were fed up. So once they brought their manufacturing over to the US, their production slowed down immensely. Removing the risk and time of international shipping is an advantage, but that's likely to be nullified with domestic pricing of raw materials and finishing. It costs less to make things abroad. The Keycult's in-house machine setup is one primary CNC and one backup. So if there are any issues with them, their output is absolutely diminished. In terms of looking at their business, if they have to trust an external anodizer, is it really any better than just relying on overseas manufacturer to do both of it? But back to the private group buy commissions. What that means is a private group could commission a custom Keycult. These are not cheap. If you look at the Keycult commission support group thread on the subreddit, some people have paid almost $4,000 upfront per unit, not for the entire run, per keyboard, only to be left in the dark for months. No response to emails, no messages, announcements, nothing. All while they're waiting, Keycult's still doing random drops of keyboards and even selling screw trays. It makes little sense. It's like your friend who ghosts your text to hang out, but is posting on IG stories all night long. As an aside, you may wonder, why would someone pay so much freaking money for a keyboard? Well, it's very hard to win the raffle for these Keycults, and the aftermarket ends up being so high that it makes more sense to customize your own keyboard, do a private run with some friends, and guarantee a keyboard with a more aggressive timeline. This is all assuming you like the product, like the company that makes it, and get it in a reasonable time. Now, imagine paying over $3,700 upfront, and the maker just doesn't respond to your request for information for months. And as soon as you threaten a chargeback, they respond. Isn't that suspicious? People mentioned that even their A-stock keyboards have had issues that would be considered B-stock. Not Keycult B-stock where you can barely see it, but actually blemishes they had to repair. From running the finished group buy runs, the customers finally got the product in hand. If you watch Los Access streams and follow his Instagram, he's shown this specific group buy run. Interestingly enough, Keycult used to be infallible in quality, especially when they were using overseas manufacturing and anodization, but after they changed to Made in USA, look at this. There's literally cracks in the weights, and honestly, it's the same one for every single unit and in multiple places. That is not just a speck in the anodization on the inside. That is visible from the outside. That was thousands of dollars, and it took way longer than it should have. The buyers were not happy. Keycult did their best to remedy this, but they had a shitstorm on their hands. It seems that the pattern is that the CNCing of the keyboard isn't a huge issue, but they're always waiting for the anodizer, or the anodizer messed up, or the anodizer has to redo things. Beyond the raffles to get the keyboards, they started to do random drops. They just DM'd people who had entered raffles prior and said, surprise, you won a secret drop, and sent an invoice, which is odd to say the least. One of the more recent drops of keyboards was the powdered blue 265 units. Right here. This finish looks like a splotchy Cerakote with some texture, but looks sticky. It honestly looks like the e-coating on my weight equipment as shown here. It's not the clean, pristine anodization that I remember from Keycult when I started the hobby in 2019 and saw in 2020 and 2021 when I got into more expensive keyboards. Oh, how they've fallen from grace. Knowing what we know now, that they're having issues with their anodizer and having limited capacity as to how many units they can CNC, one main machine and one backup machine, and them seemingly randomly deciding to do this coating on keyboards when they've always done anodization. This is a powdered coat. It kind of looks like a business decision to get a B stock CNC keyboard with some kind of physical issues to look like an A stock by creating a new category. These finishes can easily cover blemishes that the final customer can't tell. Honestly, that level of quality is something you kind of expect out of a more affordable keyboard like the QK60, QK65, and those keyboards that are only like 200 bucks. But when Keycults are 600 and above, that's not great. And during the stream itself, I had a macro lens out, and you can see it in a few places where there looks to be very small indentations. I can't really prove it to you without ripping off the finish, but it's an odd choice for a company like Keycult with their level of quality to release a product that looks like this. But at the end of the day, the Keycult sound is well-rounded and doesn't have too many shortcomings like case ping or hollowness. For that, they are solid. We used freaking high roses in this board because the client is a big baller. Those switches in this board did not disappoint. Keycult sound isn't undefeated, but it's pretty high on the charts. In 2023 though, you can get a decent sound in a lot of keyboards. In the realm of 65s, there's a Tip 65 and Forever 65. And if you go a little bit lower tier, you get the Space 65 and Think 6.5. And you can grab those pretty easily. Now you even have the GMK Ven, which has a pretty solid sound as well. So when Keycult is offering this keyboard, which is called Powder Black, that has a finish reminiscent of, no offense to Outlab, but this is their budget category, QK65 level finishing. It doesn't feel great. The GMK Ven is $410 in stock, and you know you get an A stock if you buy an A stock. So overall, in 2023, there's just less reasons to buy Keycult. You can believe in the company and its plan, but when they screw over their most devout customers, those who are willing to band together and spend thousands of dollars over retail to get a more bespoke variant, it just doesn't bode well. Aside from business practices, the final product here with this finish isn't the Keycult that I remember. I may be wrong in assuming that companies never change, but it feels very different these days. I know I say not to flip, but whenever a drop happens, it feels like 90% of the people that enter for a chance to win the chance to buy this keyboard, they just end up selling or trading the Keycult to get the keyboard that they really want. Honestly, the more green and new enthusiasts in the hobby that enters these raffles just to own a Keycult probably don't know the history of what it used to be like and what they should be getting when it comes to Keycult quality. Keycult still has a strong brand presence and a community that will go to war for them. So this here is the Keycult Discord, and as you can tell, there's actually a lot of channels in here. Keycult really trying to make a community where people would just hang as their default Discord, you know, so they can talk about everything. And this really brought together an interesting group of people. If you go to the discussion, you look at the member list, there's some moderators, a partner, and these acolytes. These are kind of like the big super fans that have been involved with the server for a long time. And the word from the street is people are afraid to voice criticisms in the Keycult Discord because these acolytes or just members in general end up taking it too far to defend Keycult. So here's an example of a conversation with McMerlin. He's a longtime content creator in the space that came well before I did, so I would call him an OG honestly. In these screenshots, McMerlin was just voicing that his group buy board just was more scuffed than he expected out of a Keycult board. And you can see the responses here in the pure vitriol towards Merlin of just expressing an opinion and concern. So yeah, they definitely go to war for their vendor. But their product is no longer the highest tier of quality. Their blades have dulled, and honestly, the anodization of Matrix is extremely good, and even companies like Outlab can muster products with clean anodization as well. Like the Mr. Stu anodization, from what I've seen, has been great. Just having a clean look and high quality isn't enough anymore, and they can't even meet that. It seems like the only thing going for Keycult right now is the brand recognition. In between issues with communication, lack of QC for commissioned products, and lower tier finishes with these powder 265s, the community's favor may be turning away from Keycult. Hopefully you enjoyed that deep dive into Keycult from my perspective. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.